Nihilum/Ensidia, in the early days of Warcraft in 2004, formed on the EU server Magtheridon. This guild aims to be at the forefront of PvE content in the World of Warcraft. Nihilum and Ensidia are closely related because they are both led by Kungun, and this is why I've included them together. Nihilum was different to a lot of other guilds at the time. It was a lot more intense, and some would say more toxic than other guilds. But Vanilla WoW back in 2004-2005 had a more intense feel about it, and people took the game very seriously. Not that they don't take it seriously now, it's just it was more of a 2004 vibe, let's say. As things go with hyper-focused, intense players, toxicity can bubble over a bit, but when players get a bit too egotistical or toxic, then the core of the guild did step in. What was truly special about this guild was Kungun, the guild master, raid leader and master tank. His skills, leadership and contributions to the raiding scene have made him a legendary figure within the World of Warcraft. He has made such an impact on the game that when Hearthstone released their Wrathgate booster pack, he got a card named after him, Kungun the Thunderer. The merger between Nihilum and SK Gaming to form Ensidia in 2008 was driven by several factors that aimed to consolidate talent, resources, and ensured continued domination in the competitive World of Warcraft raiding scene. SK Gaming within its own right is a very large esports team competing in Counter-Strike and Warcraft 3. SK Gaming also competed at the highest level of the raiding scene during Vanilla and the Burning Crusade, but most notably SK Gaming achieved a world first kill of Kil'jaeden the Sunwell Plateau, a major milestone in their raiding career. Nihilum and Ensidia have achieved 11 world first raid clears and 41 world first boss clears. Nihilum achieved server first kills in the Molten Core, including Ragnaros, and also achieved server first kills in the Blackwing Lair defeating Nefarian. In the 4th raid of Vanilla, the Temple of Anchorage, Nihilum showed that with their guild ethos, leadership and teamwork, that they went on to achieve the world first kill on K'Fun. K'Fun is one of the most memorable bosses in the World of Warcraft and survived 113 days from release. K'Fun is remembered as being an almost impossibly hard boss to kill. Top guilds at the time spent months trying to kill this boss. It ended up having a lackluster ending to this, with a hotfix that was released to the EU hours before NA, which meant that K'Fun was dying as many guilds were zoning in. So who knows if Nihilum would have actually got the world first kill, but the history books show they did. On the 5th and final raid of Vanilla, Naxxramas was littered with bugs also. Nihilum had to deal with server crashes, lagouts, which halted their progress on the Four Horsemen, and a major bug of this raid was Death and Tax's Kel'Thuzad encounter, which failed to reset for an entire week, which allowed not one but 2 guilds to surpass them. If Death and Taxes didn't run into this Kel'Thuzad lockout, we don't know if they would have achieved the world first. All we know is Nihilum suffered through many bugs and issues just like every other top guild, and they were the ones at the end with the world first kill of Kel'Thuzad. It's unfortunate that many of Vanilla WoW's bosses were released with significant issues, but that was the essence of the game back then. We move on to the World of Warcraft's first expansion, the Burning Crusade, which was released at the beginning of 2007, which was where I started playing actually. The first 25-man raid in TBC, Gruul's Lair. Let me start by saying that at the start of TBC, there was no limit to how many buffs you could get, so you could combine elixirs, food buffs, consumables, oils, everything to have pretty much unlimited power. But back then, it took an extreme amount of time and effort to be able to gather enough resources to be able to have all these consumables at each raid. But Nihilum went to the extreme, and unlike most guilds where they would mix and match potions and elixirs to not use them all at once, because of how long it took them to farm them, Nihilum went full gung-ho every time they did a pull. Nihilum eventually managed to kill Gruul using the limited invulnerability potions, which at the time reduced all damage taken by 100% for 8 seconds to negate all damage from his shatter spell. Nihilum throughout their history have been out of the box thinkers and able to use game mechanics in a very clever way. Sometimes this did backfire on them though. The next raid is the other pit lord, Magtheridon, which was killed by Nihilum in the first 40 days on the server Magtheridon, fittingly bearing the same name. The third raid of the Burning Crusade, Serpent Shrine Caverns. Just like Vanilla, TBC had a lot of bugged bosses, and Lady Vash maybe was the worst of them. There was some drama linked to this world first kill. When Nihilum was fighting Lady Vash, she suddenly bugged out and lost a lot of health and was quickly killed. There was a forum post by an ex-Nihilum member called Loot, who claimed that Nihilum intentionally exploited the boss, but this was largely contested by Nihilum and said it was false. Nihilum have spoken about this, and they have said that they wiped and Vash was on a low percentage health when Loot soulstone rezzed and one-shotted her during the health reset period using the spell Shadow Word Death. There is some screenshots from that time, which I will show, which proves Lute was acting on his own and this wasn't planned. Or was this just a massive ruse? I'll let you decide. Nevertheless, Method were quick to jump on this, and what became as the legit world first, causing a lot of drama about which kill was the real world first. If this happened to Method, say, would they refute the world first? We will never know the answer, but either way, Nihilum were in a very good place to claim the world first title, with the help of Spaghetti Code or not. As we move on to the next raid, Tempest Keep, this was notable for many reasons. Most of them were patches. The final boss, Kel'Thas, the first incarnation of this fight, was near impossible. I won't delve into the complexities and the mechanics of this fight, because I don't even understand them to be honest. But let's just say, Blizzard had to step in multiple times for hotfixes, patches and reworks, even health changes and damage changes and zone changes. Some guilds did actually manage to kill him before certain nerfs, like Nihilum, which was a remarkable achievement for the guild. The next raid, the Battle for Mount Hyjal. Technically this was in the game from the beginning, but there was a lot of gatekeeping within the raiding scene at this time, where you had to go through stages before you could get to each one in order. Hyjal was lackluster in the end, and none of the bosses were challenging for any of the top guilds, other than Archimond. It was quite funny really, because Nihilum deemed Mount Hyjal as being rubbish, so they decided to go to the Black Temple. And did they go to the Black Temple? Nihilum got every single kill in the raid, a feat that has never been repeated until Ensidia did the same thing, with the redo of Nax in the Wrath of the Lich King expansion. Funnily enough, after Nihilum dominated Black Temple, they went back to Mount Hyjal and killed Archimond before anyone else as well. In the final raid of the Burning Crusade expansion, Sunwell Plateau, Nihilum and SK Gaming were having a hard-fought race, but SK Gaming achieved the world first on this race. There is some contention on this. Some people believe the way SK Gaming went about it was an exploit. What SK Gaming did was during the fight at 85%, 55% and the 25% mark, Kil'jaeden would target a random player and create images of that player which you had to kill. But if Kil'jaeden cast this on a player who was invulnerable, say like in an ice block, the spell didn't trigger and there were no images to kill, allowing you to focus entirely on damage dealing. Some people would consider this an exploit, but me personally, I feel that this is what Nihilum are known for, is using game mechanics to your own advantage. But this time around, the underdogs, SK Gaming, thought of it and put this into practice perfectly, achieving that world first. At the end of 2008, the Wrath of the Lich King expansion releases. It began with the reintroduction of Naxxramas, which literally had no changes to it and was quite a poor launch to the raiding expansion. Ensidia jumped on the fact that they've done this before and completely dominated it, killing every single boss and getting the world first kill. The second raid, the Obsidian Sanctum. This was the first instance of hard modes within the game, which didn't last very long. For this hard mode, you engaged the final boss while the 3 drakes were still alive, and then you gradually killed the drakes as they were introduced to the fight. This was a major DPS check, and Ensidia achieved the world first on this hard mode. The next raid was the Eye of Eternity. This fight brought lots of new mechanics to the game. Instead of just smashing buttons, you had to move around a lot, and there was a new vehicle system mechanic. It wasn't the most detailed of mechanics to today's standard, but it was definitely different and fun. Ensidia achieved the world first on this raid. And if we classify Nihilum and Ensidia as the same thing, and it did include SK Gaming in this as well, which made up part of Ensidia, they achieved 12 back-to-back world first raid clears. On to the fourth raid of the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, Ulduar. Ensidia were going through a lot of drama during this race. The final boss, Yogg-Saron, was very buggy, and this caused a lot of annoyance within the guild. The world first kill came from an unlikely guild at the time, called Exodus. But then it actually turned out that Exodus used an exploit and they got struck by the banhammer, and this world first did not count. The first legitimate kill came from a Chinese guild, Stars. After this, Ensidia took Yogg-Saron a bit more seriously. The fight was considered boring and buggy, and in the end Nihilum claimed world fourth. The fifth raid, the Trial of the Crusader. As a casual raider at the time, I actually enjoyed the Trial of the Crusader, and I have very good memories of that area. For Ensidia, this was not the case. They were dealing with members leaving and new members coming, and a lot of members of this time were pretty burnt out from the raiding scene. And of course, with world first races, there was lots of accusations being thrown around to Paragon about exploiting mechanics and skipping phases. But at this point in the game, I don't think we're surprised by anything that happens. It is definitely a harder pill to swallow though for Ensidia, because later down the line, with what happens to them in the Icecrown Citadel. In this period leading up to the Icecrown Citadel, there was many changes within the guild. On what should have been the last raid of the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, the Icecrown Citadel, and this is the most infamous and maybe contentious thing to ever occur in the World of Warcraft. But bear in mind, this supposable exploit was done on normal Icecrown Citadel, and not on heroic Icecrown Citadel. Normal mode is a cakewalk for these type of guilds, but I will delve right into it. There was a pretty simple mechanic within the fight, where the Valkyries started carrying players to the edge and throwing them off. This mechanic was not hard to deal with. You kill the Valkyries and the people live, and on normal ICC this was even easier for them. Ensidia even told them that they cleared this raid on their ults with no issue. But the issue came with the use of Saronite bombs in the engineering skill, which were used in most rogues' rotation. It was pretty common for most top players to use this to get the extra damage. The outer edges of this room during the fight are destroyed, so the area where you kill the Valkyries is much smaller. But what Ensidia did or did not know, that's the bit that's contentious, that the Saronite bombs had an exploit of sorts, or bad coding, which would rebuild the ledges in the boss rooms. Either way, Blizzard handed them a 72-hour ban. I think Ensidia are more salty with this ban just for the fact of what happened in previous raids, and previous guilds did not get the ban hammer to them. But even though morale was low, Ensidia did push through and progress through heroic ICC. Ensidia did compete in Cataclysm, achieving high rankings in such raids as the Blackwing Descent and the Bastion of Twilight, but not securing any world firsts. The guild faced increased competition and internal challenges, but continues to be a strong contender in the raiding scene. Eventually, in 2012, Ensidia struggles with the internal conflicts, leadership changes, and player departures. The guild eventually disbands, making the end of an era for one of World of Warcraft's most storied raiding guilds. The legacy of Nihilum / Ensidia remains influential in the World of Warcraft raiding scene. The community continues to remember Nihilum and Ensidia for their pioneering strategies, leadership, and achievements. They are often cited as inspiration for newer raiding guilds and players aiming to achieve high levels of competitive success. From their early success in Vanilla WoW to their dominance through the Burning Crusade and the Wrath of the Lich King, and their eventual challenges in Cataclysm, Nihilum / Ensidia's journey reflects the evolution of competitive raiding in the World of Warcraft scene and rightfully go down as one of the best guilds ever.